to this forum for candidates for the Minnesota House of Representatives, District 36A. This forum is sponsored by the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters. I'm Linda Rogers, a member of the League and a resident of Anoka, so I cannot vote for either of these candidates. The League of Women Voters, it's an ambitious organization, 94 years strong, and it does all of these things. Encourages the informed and active participation of all citizens in all levels of government, works to increase understanding of major policy issues, influences public policy through education and advocacy. But here's what the League doesn't do. It doesn't support or oppose any political party or candidate. Instead, the League provides voter education opportunities, such as this evening, to bring the candidates and their views to you, the voters. The views expressed are those of the candidates and not of the League. For more information about the League, check out the League of Women Voters Minnesota website. And did you know both women and men can join? There's plenty of work to go around. We're happy that both candidates for House District 36A are participating in tonight's forum, Jefferson Fietek and Mark Uglem. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement, then we'll take questions, responding within 1 minute, and make a 1-minute closing statement. Timers will help keep us on track. Because his last name comes first in the alphabet, Jefferson Fietek will make the first opening statement, then Mark Uglem. From then on, we will alternate who first answers questions and makes closing statements. So let's begin. Jefferson Fietek, your opening statement.
Thank you all for being here this evening, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters as well for facilitating this important experience and event to try to inform our community members. My name is Jefferson Fietek, and I am a proud member of this community. Been in Anoka Hennepin District 11 for 40 years. Born and raised in Coon Rapids. My parents just celebrated their 50th anniversary living in their home. I have been a community advocate my entire life here, working really to create positive change and support families in this community. I have been an educator for 16 years. I taught preschool for 6 years. I taught middle school for 10, and I've been also teaching at St. Scholastica on the weekends the last couple of years. I also created a couple different community-based organizations, and I did this as a volunteer because I saw problems in our community that needed to be addressed. And these programs deal with issues such as at-risk youth, anti-bullying, mental health, homelessness, and general community engagement. And the reason that I'm running for our community is because families that I have worked with over the decades have asked me, can you do more? They've said, as a volunteer, you've done more to support this community than the people that we've elected and paid to do so. And I was raised by my parents with the philosophy that it is our responsibility to leave the community a better place than we got it. And so that is why I would like to represent the cities of Champlin and Coon Rapids in the House of Representatives.
Mark Uglem.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you all for coming. Thank you to the League. This is a great exercise in democracy this evening. The League of Women Voters provides a very important forum here for all of us, and I'm honored to be here. I'm also very honored to have served the last 2 years in the state legislature in the House of Representatives. It's an awesome responsibility and a difficult job. I've been a resident of Champlin for over 24 years, raised a family here, 3 great kids, and my wife Pam sitting in the front row for a change. Very amazing. And ever since I moved up here, I've been involved with the community. Prior to this, I lived in Brooklyn Park, and I was involved down there too as a planning commissioner when we did the Edinburgh project and projects like that. But it began with the Champlin Youth Hockey Board and ended up serving 3 terms as mayor. In between that, I had a few stops on the way as the chair of the Planning Commission and also on the Parent Advisory Committee for the high school, as well as a committee that did the senior housing project here in Champlin. So I was also a council member, we're in Eric's ward at one time too. I'm a retired business guy. I spent 35 years in business in an executive position in manufacturing. Invaluable experience when you go to the legislature because there aren't a lot of business people there. I'm married, 3 children, and I'm running because I've always been motivated to try and make our city better and the state of Minnesota better. And we all know there's a lot of work to be done. I'm very pleased to be able to report to you later on today that we did get a lot of work done in a bipartisan manner, and that's what I intend to do in the future. So thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate this opportunity.
The audience has supplied a set of questions that really are broad and cover a lot of different territory. Let's start with health insurance. What are your thoughts on MNsure? Should the state make any changes? If so, what? Mark Uglem.
MNsure, huh? Well, I do have to say that MNsure is a disaster waiting to happen. If any of you looked in the Star and Tribune today, you saw the article on the front page that said MNsure rates are on the rise. And somehow Governor Dayton came up with a 4.5% price increase in MNsure. Funny thing about that was the Health Partners executives who are involved with MNsure are quoted in that same article as saying, we have no idea how he came up with these figures. The true figures in the Star and Tribune, it says bargain plans get more costly. The bronze plan, according to the Star and Tribune, will be up 21% higher. The silver plan will be up, that will be up 18%, and the platinum plan 37%. So we have been lied to about MNsure. It's not working.
Jefferson Fietek.
Is MNsure a perfect plan? Absolutely not. But you know, my car doesn't run very well. That doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of it, because if I don't have a car, I can't move forward. MNsure has helped thousands of people access health coverage who didn't have it before. Yeah, the rates have increased. Are we still some of the lowest rates in the country? Yes. The fact of the matter is there are many people who without programs like MNsure would not have health coverage because of a pre-existing condition. I look at myself. I'm 40 years old. When I left my parents' home to go away to college, I didn't have health insurance anymore. I didn't get health insurance again until I was 30. And it wasn't that I was lazy or not working hard enough or didn't have a good job. I actually had 2 jobs that were part-time jobs that refused to give me full-time so that I could actually get health care. So it's a plan that needs some work, but it's better than just throwing it away and going back to what we had before, which was nothing.
We have a couple questions on specific pieces of legislation. The first regards the election process. Do you support legislation that requires voter ID? Jefferson Fietek.
I do not support the needs for voter ID, and I think when we made a constitutional amendment vote last year, the voters supported that decision as well.
Mark Uglem.
Well, I do support voter ID. I've always supported voter ID. I supported it when this last election cycle. I think that's very important to provide integrity to the process. We have a number of populations that are in a state of flux. And, basically when you go to Target and you write a check, or Fleet Farm and write a check, you have to provide ID. I don't see anything wrong with voter ID, but I do think that the main thing is we have to make it available and easy to get for people that come into this country or come into this state. It has to be readily available, has to be verifiable, and if the state has to ante up a few dollars to make sure that this program is successful and accessible to all, I'm all for that. But voting is a very important part of democracy, and we need to protect that right.
And the second piece of legislation that's asked about was passed this year. Do you support the new Safe Schools legislation that passed this year? Why or why not? Mark Uglem.
In particular, are you referring to the bullying bill?
Can somebody in the audience clarify?
Okay. Actually, I did not vote for that bill, and there were a couple of reasons. Actually, as far as bullying goes, nobody wants anything about bullying is a bad situation in schools. We all realize that. However, the bill had some major problems. One of them is it's an unfunded mandate on Anoka Hennepin schools. It will cost lots of money to implement. The other thing is I'm a big local control person, and I believe that independent school districts, the word independent, can write bullying bills themselves. Bullying is much different in Anoka Hennepin than it is in Ely, Minnesota, and you need to have that flexibility. This single law, one size does not fit all.
Jefferson Fietek.
I do support that, as I do support the safety and well-being of all of our students in our schools. Being a school teacher in this district for as long as I have, I saw firsthand what happens when a district fails to have policies in place to accurately track and follow up with issues of bullying and harassment. What was happening in our school district was it was different school to school. And as I've worked around the state on issues of anti-bullying, I have found that many school districts have really no plans in place to address these issues. And I think Senator Hoffman spoke very clearly when he supported this bill as well. He was the vice chair of the school board at this time and said if this bill had been in place, it would have probably prevented a lot of the crises that happened in our school district. So I think it's a good thing, and the idea that it's an unfunded mandate is simply not accurate.
Moving from the social environment to our environment. What will you do to prevent mining interests from threatening the water resources adjacent to the BWCA? Jefferson Fietek.
Well, I think it's important, and I think this is a tough line to deal with because we've got jobs, and then we've got to protect our environment. And I think that I think we need to really look at partnerships where we have these companies that are doing the construction, and having them meet with environmental companies to make sure that we are doing everything we can to protect the waters, because the reality is we've got to drink that water. And we need to make sure that we're making decisions that are protecting that water, but at the same time supporting those jobs. So it's really a conversation about specific strategies versus sort of, well, we can't get it done, we disagree, and that's really not the way that we need to run the state. We need to be working more in partnership.
Mark Uglem.
Thanks, Linda. Well, it is a difficult question, and you have to understand that mining has gone on in northern Minnesota for many, many years, and it is a way of life up there. And it's very, very important to those people, very important about the jobs and the economic security of everybody in the region. This copper nickel mining also, though, is very dangerous to the environment. Now, we do have the pieces in place at the state of Minnesota with the Pollution Control Agency and the Department of Natural Resources to do the studies, and they are doing the studies. It's ongoing. And also conversations about setting aside massive amounts of escrow money so the state is not set holding the bag on this thing. So it is going to require a lot of research and a lot of regulation. There's no doubt about that, and I'm not a big regulatory guy, but in this case, we're going to need that to make sure the water supply in the future is good for the rest of the state.
The flow of money in a different way with this question. Do you support local government aid for cities? Mark Uglem.
Well, of course I do. LGA is a very, very important part of both the City of Champlin and the City of Coon Rapids budget. Champlin got, and I voted for this bill, over $275,000 in LGA money that went into, actually, I believe in the budget, when I was talking to Armand, we're still doing the funding for trucks and street equipment and things like that, rather than put it towards something else. But LGA is very important to cities. Coon Rapids got about more than 3 times that amount. Now, LGA is a mechanism that can reduce the taxes for cities and reduce the taxes for residents. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Some cities did not reduce taxes, even though they did get a substantial increase in LGA this year. Champlin stayed just about the same.
Jefferson Fietek.
I think it's crucial that state and local governments work together. Every city has its unique challenges, and we look at the cities of Champlin and Coon Rapids. We have the Mississippi River running through it. This doesn't apply to every city. And there's places where the river runs through the state where there aren't homes on the river. And I think our job as representatives is to be the voice for our communities and make sure that when it comes to that local funding that we are speaking out for our communities and asking for that support.
You would be responsible for the cities of Coon Rapids and Champlin. What are your priorities? Jefferson Fietek.
I love that question. And the reason I love that question is one of the things that I think that we have sort of lost touch with is that 36A is 2 cities. And I would like to make sure that we are really providing voice and support for both of those cities. Both cities have their similarities, and both cities have their differences. We have a large population of Hmong and Liberian and Hispanic community members, particularly in the Coon Rapids area, and also throughout Champlin. It's very diverse. And as I look around this room of residents of non-color, I would like to see us as representatives really engage all of the communities and be a voice for all of the communities. And I think we've lost touch with that.
Mark Uglem.
Well, priorities, and I've spoken to both mayors because I've known both mayors for many years. And priorities are, you talked about it in the mayoral debate, infrastructure. For instance, Coon Rapids. Coon Rapids, and this is in the news every day, has a very, very busy rail line. Hundreds and hundreds of tank cars of oil going down the track every day. And public safety and the oil train problem affects Coon Rapids greatly. I'm proud to say that I voted to provide greater safety because of that. City of Champlin, I voted and was instrumental in getting Highway 610 extended all the way to Interstate 94. We talk about development, and infrastructure on roads is important for development. I also was on a bill with Representative Newton to expand a lane on Highway 10 in Coon Rapids, and that would be very important too. So those items are some of the wants and needs that are right on top for those 2 cities.
More on your approach to the job. Working together with the other side is important in divided government. How have you worked in a bipartisan manner? Mark Uglem.
Well, that was one of my goals when I went over there. And I've sponsored over 100 bills as an author or co-author for many different reasons. And about 78% of them had all bipartisan support. I had Democrats on my bills that we would work through and work together. My voting record is somewhere in the neighborhood of 78% on bipartisan votes in the House of Representatives. I learned in business that you have to work together with people to get things done. People have to buy in. You can't jam it down their throats. And rabid partisan politics is not part of my scenario. You can speak to just about anybody at the legislature, but I worked very well with everybody across the board on both parties. Very important to do.
Jefferson Fietek.
You know, one of the things that I always tell my students whenever we do a group project is it doesn't really matter if you don't like everybody in your group. The reality is you still have to get the project done. I think sometimes as politicians we lose sight of that and we get stuck in the he's a Republican, she's a Democrat, and so forth. And the reality is when we are fighting and not getting decisions made, it isn't the politicians who are suffering, it's the people who are suffering. And I think as your representative, I want to make sure that I keep the eye on the people. With both of the community-based organizations that I created to help families, we never asked when you needed help, are you Republican or Democrat? It never was a question. As I visited the doors of thousands of people in Coon Rapids and Champlin, even though my party has asked me to ask at the door if they're Republican or Democrat, I won't. Because honestly, the community is important over your party affiliation, and I'm going to take that to the Capitol.
A couple of questions now about youth. Transgender youth in athletics is a topic this week in the newspapers. What decision would you like to have made about this issue? Jefferson Fietek.
I think this is a prime example of using fear as a way to scare people to make a decision. There was an ad that was in the Star Tribune that led people to believe that the high school league was going to be voting on issues such as showering. The reality is that was not on the table at all. And unfortunately, this is something that we have seen before when people tried to scare people in voting against the Safe and Supportive Schools bill. All young people should have access to participate in school sports and any other school activity. And the reality is, if you're transgender, you're not a boy standing in the shower with a girl. You're a girl in the shower with a girl.
Mark Uglem.
Thank you, Linda. Well, obviously this is a very difficult question, but I am really concerned about the other 99%. I believe, first of all, that transgender kids should be able to play sports and on an equal basis and everything else. But I'm also very concerned about all the other kids and all of their rights and their feelings about all of this. And I don't like to see anything really that, particularly a state high school league policy that has been ill thought out, did not have any input from the Minnesota Family Council and some of the other religious organizations. I'm concerned about, what about Catholic schools? What about religious schools? This policy, as it stands today, is full of holes. It needs a lot of work, and it doesn't address the vast majority of the people either. So I think that this particular item should be tabled at the Minnesota State High School League and brought back after much further consideration.
How will you support our public schools, staff, and students? Mark Uglem.
Well, I have. I voted for the K-12 education bill, and some of my colleagues did not, but I believe in education. I always have believed in education. When I was mayor here, I was very active with the local school board. I am now, and I'm very active with the Minnesota School Board Association, whose lobbyist is sitting in the back room here. I voted for all-day kindergarten because I believe kids should get a chance. And getting an early start in kindergarten gives them a better chance. Our children have to compete in the 21st century. We have to compete against China for business every day. And we're not going to do that without an educated youth. So I support the schools just about 100% of the time. And I believe it's the right thing to do.
Well, I'm an educator. I've been educating since I was in high school, back when our district couldn't afford to do some programming for elementary school kids, so a group of my friends and I decided to teach the kids on the weekends for free and on school days off. I think that it's about time that we really look at the education system and stop teaching to the test. I think we need to teach to learn and to understand. And I think we also need to really celebrate the fact that we have 3 colleges in our community. that we haven't been supporting. And I think that there's nothing wrong with learning a trade. I think getting a college degree or learning a trade, all these things are important. But to do so, we need to make sure that we're keeping it affordable and that we're supporting students as they reach out for grants and financial aids. There's great programs like post-secondary enrollment, which provides many of our kids an opportunity to get a 2-year degree. And these are got to be the smartest kids. And it concerns me when we have representatives who want to cut funding to those sort of programs and not support our local colleges.
The next 3 questions are all about building things. A very important part of this session is bonding. What bills would you introduce? And actually, I believe they mean this part of this biennium, since that would be the second half of the biennium. A very important part is bonding. What bills would you introduce, Jefferson Fietek?
Well, you know, I'm concerned about our roads greatly and want to make sure that we're supporting our roads and our general infrastructure. You know, I'd like to look at, and this was something that Representative Jerry Newton had brought up, and I think is a phenomenal idea, the idea of getting our hydropower going at our dam, ultimately saving us money as community members. I think we need to make sure that with our bridges in particular that we're keeping them safe, that we're planning long term. I'd like to really look at an assessment of both the cities of Coon Rapids and Champlin and meet with the mayors and city council members and community members as well and find out really what are the areas that are of greatest concern. Because again, I think we need to make sure we're getting that connection between state and local government, and instead of guessing what each city needs, reach out to those people that really know firsthand what it is specifically that we need.
Mark Uglem.
Well, first of all, transportation, roads and bridges typically aren't included in the bonding bill. It's included in the regular spending bill. So they can be, but most of the time they are not. The bonding bill at the state of Minnesota I voted for, and one of the things that you're going to see is the Champlin Mill Pond Dam being rebuilt this year. It's the first time ever that Champlin got any bonding money. Not too bad for a freshman legislature, but about $3 million. These types of things now also for Champlin. I spoke with one of our environmental residents here, expert in the field, and we're also talking about the mill pond, and the mill pond getting renovated. It's in terrible shape. This is a typical bonding type thing. Also for bonding for the city of Coon Rapids, there are a number of projects that need to be done, particularly with some of the railroad crossings and things like that could add to safety for bonding. Thank you.
What position do you hold on the $77 million Senate office building? Mark Uglem.
Well, you said it all. It's $77 million that we don't need to spend. And it's a big thing in the election right now. Everybody is talking about it. But the fact of the matter is the senators have their own office building. We are spending $126 million right now to rebuild the state capitol, which is needed. That's where the senators' offices are. Now, I ask you, go online and take a look at that Senate office building. It's got big glass walls. Well, do the math. There's 67 senators, $77 million. It's over $1 million an office. It's really ridiculous. But they did cut out the reflecting pool, and they did cut out some of the gym facilities that they had in there, so they're trying to be fiscally responsible. You know, I can't see it. It's just put that into roads, please.
You know, I didn't vote for it. I can say that because I wasn't part of the system. However, I really wanted to learn more about why this might be important to some people. And I actually was visiting with some community members over at the Mary T facilities in Coon Rapids, which provide accessible housing for families and individuals who are dealing with disabilities. And there was a gentleman named Christopher who was in a wheelchair, and he was very happy to now have his own apartment. And the Senate building got brought up. And he said to me, you know, in the Capitol building, I go there and I fight for people with disabilities. And we need to renovate that Capitol, and we need to also have our senators and representatives accessible in one building. Not all over the city, because I can't get all over the city. There's a lot of us who have mobility issues. And he said it's important, too, that I get to be able to have some dignity. My wheelchair doesn't fit through many of the doors and even the bathroom stalls of our Capitol. So in order to serve the community, we need to look at making some changes to support our community.
And a different sort of building. Would you support an increase in the gas tax to be earmarked specifically for roads and bridges? Jefferson Fietek.
You know, I come from a background of addressing problems without it necessarily being about money. So much of the work that I do comes from, we don't have the money to do it. I've heard it in my jobs, I hear it from my community, and I go, let's come up with another solution. I think sometimes we fall too quickly on taxes as a way to solve an issue, and I like to look at maybe exploring some other options of making sure that we're taking care of those roads without necessarily the burden falling on the person who's at the pumps.
Mark Uglem.
The idea of expanding the gas tax is a very bad idea. The thing about, Governor Dayton increased the tax burden on the state of Minnesota by $2.1 billion last biennium. Granted, they cut back on some of the business taxes, but it's like me borrowing you $20 and then giving you back 15. You're still light, and the gas tax. All we need to do is take a look at spending priorities here. We spend $11.4 billion in the Health and Human Services budget. When Jim Abler was chair, he cut that by $1 billion. We spend $220 million on roads. $220 million. Think about that. It's that little. So we need to just reprioritize spending.
One more question. Do you support state ID laws for tobacco, alcohol, fishing, and hunting licenses? Mark Uglem.
Well, of course. When I sat up here as mayor, we have an ordinance about young smokers, and we have an ordinance about people selling to young smokers. And we fine retailers that do that consistently. We have a responsibility to our children, and smoking is proven dangerous to your health, and anything we can do to stop that, I'm for. Fishing licenses, why not? Have you ever been stopped by a warden? I mean, I have. Never had a game violation, but they check your fishing license, and they'll check your license too, and they'll check everything else while they're at it. But these are law enforcement provisions. The laws are on the books. I see no reason why we can't support them.
Jefferson Fietek.
My first job was working in a gas station, and they used to send in undercover cops all the time, and we were informed that if you sold to a minor, you had to pay the fine, and you were fired. So I totally agree with Mark about the importance of, one, keeping the kids safe, but also, the employees are suffering that. I guess I don't see, I haven't heard anything from voters of any concerns or issues in regards to any of these issues. It's never made it anywhere even in the top 10. So I guess I don't think it's really an issue that we need to make any changes in regards to, because it doesn't seem to be an issue for the community. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear more about that.
It's time for closing statements. Jefferson Fietek.
I am, again, grateful to be able to speak to you here tonight. I've had the honor of being on a number of commissions and committees throughout my life. I've been on a community partnership in the city of Coon Rapids to help engage disenfranchised members of the community. I've been able to serve on the MRAC commission that helped to decide where we were going to be spending our legacy funds to support the state. I do have a long history of board work, commission work, but most importantly, community advocacy. All of the organizations that I have created had focused on one thing: solving and serving the problems of the community. And in the 20-plus years that I've been doing that work, never once have I been paid for it. It's been 100% volunteer. And I'm doing it because I think it's right. Not because I had to address those problems, but because I felt it was the right thing to do. And so the reason that I'm running for House of Representatives is I want to do the right thing for you.
Mark Uglem.
Well, I went to the legislature, and a great honor to do so, with two things in mind. One, to get things done, to avoid gridlock and work in a bipartisan manner. And I did that. I delivered on that. I got 610 completed out to Maple Grove, starting in 2015. Increased funding for Anoka Hennepin schools, voted for the K-12 education bill. Strengthened domestic abuse laws, which I'm very proud of. Expanded pregnancy leave for young mothers, for working families, very important. Defended small business. I'm getting an award for that next week from the National Federation of Independent Business. And returned state monies to our cities for tax relief. But most importantly of all, I opposed Governor Dayton's tax increases. So I voted in a bipartisan manner, got things done, and I really respect each and every one of you, and I hope that you'll vote for me so I can continue my work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jefferson Fietek and Mark Uglem, for your willingness to speak and to run for public office. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area, thank you, audience, live audience, for coming in person, cable audience for viewing on cable. If you have questions or want to learn more about the election process, visit the League of Women Voters Minnesota website or mnvotes.org. And remember to vote November 4th. This concludes the Legislative Candidates Forum for House District 36A. Thank you.